Welcome to Dialogue. Today we are undertaking a really critical deep dive into one of the most powerful, influential, and cultural phenomena of the last decade. I'm talking about the explosive rise of a specific hypermasculine archetype. This is a figure who operates completely outside of traditional media, but has captured the attention and the fierce loyalty of millions of men across the globe.
It's a necessary conversation, it really is. And that's because the figure we're discussing isn't just some passing social media trend. He's not an outlier. He represents the inevitable result, almost like a law of physics, of certain specific cultural conditions coming to a head. If we don't take the time to really analyze and understand the profound psychological void he filled, we risk misunderstanding, well, the entire modern social landscape.
And that's the mission statement for this entire deep dive right there. Our goal is to analyze why this figure became so astronomically massive and why that success matters to society right now. We have to start with the fundamental thesis, the viral hook that explains his influence. This figure is famous not because his philosophy is necessarily right, but because millions of men felt genuinely humiliated, lied to about how the world works, and, well, invisible.
And that's the moment. That's the opening he steps into.
Yeah.
He looked directly at that invisible chronic pain, that sense of confusion that was just growing in silence. And he offered them a simple, powerful, and utterly brutal message. He basically said, "You're not crazy for feeling this way. You're just weak, and weakness isn't permanent. It can be fixed."
That level of clarity, especially in a climate of deliberate ambiguity, is just psychologically lethal. It cuts through the fog instantly.
It's the essential breakthrough. And if we zoom out, the ultimate thesis for our whole conversation is this. This figure is the predictable result when a society removes traditional sources of meaning for men, replaces that vacuum with a constant drip feed of shame, and then acts surprised when people start worshiping raw power as the only truth left. So for you, the listener, this conversation is less about the personality and far more about the cultural context that allowed that message to thrive.
Okay, let's unpack this cultural vacuum because that's the true origin story. We have to spend time on the conditions that created this intense demand for extreme voices. When you look at the sources, they detail these modern, almost paradoxical rules that are applied to men today. Rules that create a kind of perpetual paralysis.
It's a beautifully designed trap, really, a feedback loop of impossible expectations that guarantees failure, or at the very least guarantees chronic indecision. The modern definition of manhood is so contradictory that it leaves men in this state of constant low-grade uncertainty about where the goalposts even are.
Or if they even exist.
Exactly. They're searching for a map, but the map's been erased.
Let's run through these specific rules because they really define the cage. The first one is a classic psychological trap. You must be sensitive, emotionally aware, but you are absolutely forbidden from being needy. Never be vulnerable.
The paradox is built in. Sensitivity requires emotional honesty, the willingness to share your internal state. But neediness in modern culture isn't just vulnerability. It's vulnerability that demands something from another person's support, reciprocity. And that demand is seen as a transgression against the ideal of stoic male self-sufficiency.
So you're allowed to have the feelings.
You're allowed to have them, but you are absolutely forbidden from requiring anything from others as a result.
So that immediately invalidates the honest exchange that forms the bedrock of real connection. It forces all the emotional processing inward.
Exactly. It mandates self-management of all emotional states. And where do you go with those feelings? Nowhere that requires another person to step up. This creates immense internal loneliness.
Okay, the second rule, which you see a lot in professional settings, you must be confident, take charge, have conviction. But you must not be dominant. You can't take up too much space.
This creates an invisible shifting line that's almost impossible to walk. Confidence is supposed to project capability, leadership, but dominance, especially in a corporate HR setting or even a social group, is now almost instantly equated with aggression or entitlement. So the man is being told, project strength and leadership, but also constantly police that strength so you never, ever make anyone else uncomfortable.
It's like demanding a car drive at 100 miles an hour while constantly tapping the brakes. You can never truly commit to the action.
And the result is this kind of tepid, passive competence. It gets mistaken for humility, but it's really just a fear of transgression.
Rule number 3, and this one is crucial for anyone ambitious. Be ambitious, pursue success. But whatever you do, do not visibly outshine others, especially not your superiors.
This one dismantles the whole reward structure. Ambition is celebrated in the abstract. We love the idea of it. But actual visible success, especially when it's achieved quickly, is often viewed with suspicion.
Right.
If success requires ambition, but that ambition is penalized because it makes your colleagues or race, your middle manager, feel insecure, well, the rational incentive to strive is diminished, or at least hidden.
So the message is, get rich quietly and never let your success be seen as a challenge.
Precisely. You strive, but then you have to shrink yourself afterward to maintain social harmony.
And finally, the big one that ties it all together. Perform masculinity, but never, ever make anyone uncomfortable with that performance.
Which functionally reduces masculinity to this neutered concept. A set of characteristics for self-discipline, like waking up early but stripped of all external impact. And the core insight here, the fuel for the archetype we're discussing, is that men are given these extremely strict contradictory rules, but feel there are absolutely no rewards for compliance.
So you follow the rules.
And you end up passive, invisible, and unrewarded.
That lack of reward for compliance is the structural flaw. That's what creates the vacuum.
And to understand that vacuum, we have to look at how men were historically shaped. Through traditional initiation structures. These things provided the map.
What specifically are we talking about? What provided the map in the past?
Historically, it was processes that involved earned suffering and clear mentorship. Think of things like military service or war brutal, but definitive metrics for courage. Apprenticeship, which demanded submission to a master and sacrifice for an earned skill. Or major life commitments like fatherhood, religious covenants, even just grinding, shared physical labor. These paths were hard, but they provided clear public metrics for status. You earned it.
You crossed a threshold, there's a definable before and after.
Yes, the clarity was key. Now look at what's replaced them. The modern shapers are abstract and passive. They're algorithms, pornography, dating apps, HR departments.
That's a critical contrast. You go from a master craftsman guiding your hands to a dating app algorithm sorting you into a tier based on photos.
Traditional structures demanded active participation, often pain, and they delivered a defined role in the community. Modern structures demand passive consumption. Algorithms deliver curated reality. Dating apps deliver competitive judgment.
It's also abstract.
The transition is the core problem. Society replaced true, difficult initiation with mere observation. Men became spectators in their own lives, waiting for permission or direction from anonymous forces. And when you're waiting for direction, feeling humiliated and paralyzed, you are the perfect candidate for radical external direction. That's why this archetype works. It's an instruction manual dropped into a deep silence.
So the demand side is fully established. Ambiguity, passivity, loneliness. The moment the figure we're discussing steps onto the scene, the stark contrast in messaging is, it's just undeniable. He is, to use the phrase from our sources, the anti-therapist.
And that's not just a gimmick, it's the lifeblood of his brand. Mainstream self-help tends towards nuance, emotional processing, the careful unpacking of trauma. His entire approach is the direct, brutal inverse of that.
He doesn't say, let's unpack your trauma. He cuts through all of that noise and says, nobody cares about your excuses. Get stronger.
And that, psychologically, is where he converts millions. For people struggling with inertia and paralysis, that brutal clarity felt like an immediate lifeline. He provided a definitive, actionable, military-grade command in a world that was only offering gentle, open-ended suggestions.
It's the feeling of oxygen when you're drowning in ambiguity. A punch to the face that tells you which way is up is often better than gentle floating instructions. The pain of indecision is often worse than the pain of a hard truth.
Absolutely. The pain of a harsh truth is less agonizing than the chronic pain of waiting. And we need to dissect his true genius, the 3 psychological truths about men that he capitalized on masterfully.
Okay, let's start with the first one, which connects back to the collapse of the map. Men crave hierarchy.
They crave a clear structure and a definable place within it. Now, this doesn't mean every man wants to be at the top. The fundamental need is to know where you stand. Ambiguity is painful. If you know you're currently at a low rank, you can define the metrics needed to move up. He provided that structure instantly. He said, here is the ladder, here are the rungs, and this is where you stand.
So he replaces the existential dread of being unranked with the manageable challenge of being low-ranked. That's a huge psychological switch.
It's the difference between dread and an actionable plan. The second genius truth. Men want clear, tangible metrics.
This speaks to the need for the tangible over the abstract.
Yes, they need external ways to measure progress that aren't subjective. Abstract goals like achieve emotional fulfillment can be fuzzy. He bypassed all of that. He offered physical, financial, and temporal metrics. Measurable strength gain in the gym, specific income targets, quantifiable discipline like cold showers. These are goals you can track every single day, independent of anyone else's opinion.
You don't need a committee to validate whether you can deadlift 10 more pounds or if your bank balance grew. That quantification provides immediate, undeniable feedback. It creates a self-validating system of worth.
Which is exactly what was missing. It's a system where you are in control of the metric.
And the final piece. Men respect certainty. I get why that's attractive, but the sources imply his philosophy is often flawed. How do people square that?
That is the essential trade-off. In an increasingly uncertain world where authorities often contradict one another or are seen as untrustworthy, absolute certainty, even if the philosophy is flawed, is often valued more than cautious, nuanced compassion.
Nuance is a luxury. Certainty is a survival weapon in chaotic times.
It provides immense cognitive relief. When you're being told contradictory things by every source, the person who steps up and says, "This is exactly how the world works, and here are the 3 steps," instantly becomes an authority figure. He wasn't selling nuance. He was selling conviction.
So, to synthesize this, if he had only sold misogyny, he would have remained a niche voice. The truth is, he didn't primarily sell toxicity.
No, not at first. He sold direction. He provided the clear, straightforward, measurable map that society had taken away. The fact that the map included objectionable elements was, for many, a secondary concern to the desperate need for clarity.
Let's move on to classifying this figure because he functions as a true archetype, a historical remix of ancient power structures, but distorted through 21st century lenses.
That's a perfect fusion, born of desperation and opportunity. When you look at his presentation, he's deliberately drawing on the deepest, most powerful structures of male power. The conqueror, the patriarch, the warlord, the tribal chief.
But none of those ancient archetypes had to deal with the instant visibility of Instagram.
Exactly. That ancient power fantasy is strained through 3 modern filters. The first is late-stage capitalism, which equates moral worth with financial net worth. The second is social media, which demands constant, visible proof of success. And the third is sexual deregulation, which turns intimacy into a transactional marketplace.
The result is the warrior capitalist. Power is no longer measured in territory, but in liquid assets and visible consumption. It's a highly transactional view of everything.
And there's no better symbol for this than the Bugatti. We have to deconstruct why that luxury car matters so much.
It's not just about the money, is it? Plenty of rich people have expensive cars. Why does that specific symbol hold such enormous weight?
Because it's visible, undeniable, irrefutable proof of dominance. Remember the context. For millions, the link between effort and outcome has been severed. You see people working harder than their parents for fewer rewards. The system has failed to provide a reliable, meritocratic path.
So when effort is invalidated as the path to success, people logically stop trusting the process and they start worshiping the outcome.
Exactly. They start worshiping results, regardless of the means. The Bugatti, or the private jet, functions as instant, external, non-debatable proof that the entire ruthless philosophy works. It bypasses intellectual trust. It validates the speaker instantly. He knows how to win the game, so his rules must be the truth.
It's a trophy you can't argue with. You can debate philosophy, you can debate morality, but you cannot debate the existence of a multi-million-dollar hypercar. It's material proof.
It serves as irrefutable evidence that he has mastered the material world, the very world where his followers feel they are failing. This worship of results provides the crucial legitimacy to sell the philosophy that comes with the wealth. The message is, I have conquered the system that is conquering you. Follow me and you can share in the spoils.
Let's shift to maybe the most volatile area he speaks to, the sexual economy. The core assertion he makes is that dating and technology have fundamentally exacerbated competition among men, driving demand for this extreme philosophy.
It's crucial to analyze the mechanism of competition here, because it's unprecedented. Dating apps have inadvertently reduced intimacy to 3 core principles: hypercompetition, optimization, and rejection at scale.
Let's focus on the optimization part because it's a constant source of stress.
Optimization means your perceived worth, which used to be built over years in a community, is now reduced to a few photos and a bio. Men are forced into a state of constant surface-level self-promotion. If you're not optimizing your body, your profile, your photos, you are statistically irrelevant.
And the competition is relentless, which leads to rejection at scale. Men who might have found partners in their local orbit now face rejection from hundreds of people in an evening. It's digitized, high volume, and anonymous, which makes it feel systemic.
Which brings us to a detail that has profound psychological consequences. For the first time in history, average men are competing directly, visually, and constantly with the global top 5% of desirable partners.
Before, you competed with the best 5 guys in your town. Now, the algorithm constantly shows you the global 5%, the model, the celebrity, and makes them the perceived default standard.
That's a catastrophic shift in expectation. The standard for what constitutes a viable mate has been wildly inflated. This creates an environment where the vast majority of men who are, by definition, average, feel the game is unwinnable.
And what does the hyper-masculine figure offer in response to this mass frustration?
He provides counsel that resonates deeply with that feeling. He tells men, essentially, to stop playing fair in a rigged system. He claims to expose the matrix.
That is the dangerous, magnetic core of the message. It gives them permission to abandon the social contract.
It's the dual nature of his appeal. The analysis has to acknowledge that this message, while destructive in its application, is perceived as fundamentally honest by those who feel the system is stacked against them. When men feel that the traditional rules, be nice, be patient, lead only to invisibility, the instruction to discard those rules gains enormous virulence.
He validates their suspicion that the rules they were taught are lies that only benefit the people enforcing them. He reframes their failure as a systemic consequence, not a personal one.
And that transformation, from personal failure to righteous anger, is profoundly activating. It gives them a target for their frustration and a playbook to fight back, however flawed that playbook may be.
We've established the void, the clarity, and the anger. Now we have to do some intellectual triage. Distill the actionable principles from the destructive philosophy. Because to ignore that he provides some useful instruction is to miss the point of his influence. We need to identify the truth he highlights.
The utility of his message lies in its uncompromising focus on personal agency and radical discipline. It speaks to a harsh reality that modern culture often prefers to ignore.
Let's look at where he's objectively right, the takeaways that genuinely help people. First, undeniable truth. Weak men are easily taken advantage of.
This is an ancient, objective truth. Financial, physical, or social weakness makes one vulnerable. His philosophy demands self-strengthening as a fundamental defense mechanism. The message is simple. Build yourself up so others cannot easily knock you down.
It's a core principle of self-defense applied to life. Second truth. Confidence, discipline, and status are real-world advantages. They open doors.
And discipline, above all, is the foundational virtue he emphasizes that transcends his toxic messaging. The followers who see real improvement are those who implement his calls for radical discipline in fitness, work, and time management. These principles are the undisputed engines of material success, no matter who's preaching them.
And the final, most bracing truth, the one that's a necessary prompt for maturity, the realization that no one is coming to save you.
That is the difficult rite of passage into true adulthood. It dissolves the fantasy that institutions or partners will step in to solve your fundamental life problems. It forces you to acknowledge you are the sole architect of your outcomes. This radical self-reliance, when stripped of the poison, is profoundly empowering.
So he uses these genuine truths as the bait, providing tangible results. But then he thoroughly poisons the well with his underlying philosophy. Let's shift to the destructive elements, the philosophical corruptions.
The corruptions all center on reducing the complexity of human life. The first and most damaging is reducing people, especially women, to leverage or status tools.
Instead of seeking partnership or connection, the advice is to view people as assets to be managed or acquired.
It is the ultimate transactional view, devoid of empathy. It's not a relationship, it's resource management.
The second corruption, mistaking fear or compliance for genuine respect.
Respect is hard-won and organic. Fear is easily imposed through leverage or control. They are psychologically distinct. When you operate from a philosophy of dominance, you seek compliance. But fear breeds deep resentment, and that resentment breeds eventual subversion.
Third, and this connects to the loneliness we talked about, replacing true connection and vulnerability with control mechanisms.
This is the architectural flaw of the entire worldview. Deep connection requires the risk of being hurt. Control is the desperate attempt to mitigate that risk. When you prioritize control, you build structures that are incredibly rigid and lonely. They keep pain out, but they also keep genuine connection out.
And finally, treating intimacy and relationships solely as conquest.
The language of conquest is fundamentally dehumanizing. It implies a zero-sum game where one party wins and the other is subjugated. This destroys the possibility of mutuality and shared purpose.
The central warning here has to be crystal clear. Power without wisdom creates tyrants, even if that tyranny is confined to one's own personal life.
Tyranny doesn't require a kingdom. It only requires a subject who has been reduced to a means to an end. That is the poison that undermines every single benefit of the discipline he preaches.
Which brings us to the inevitable outcome, the emptiness at the top of the material mountain. We can't deny the surface success stories. Many followers show tangible improvements.
The surface improvements are undeniable, and that's why the message is so sticky. Many men do dramatically improve their bodies, their finances, their businesses. They report a sharp increase in surface confidence.
These are real changes that solve immediate problems: low self-esteem, poor financial health. Yet, our sources note that many still report feeling empty or unfulfilled after achieving all this. Why?
Because dominance does not cure meaninglessness. It only serves as a powerful, addictive distraction from it. The hypermasculine philosophy dictates a transactional formula. If you achieve absolute external victory, the internal void must be filled. But the paradox is that the material void gets filled, and the existential void remains.
It's the difference between satisfying a hunger and feeding a soul.
Exactly. Hunger is a material need that conquest can satisfy, meaning is an existential need that conquest cannot touch. The figure promises that if you win the material game, you win the life game. But once you reach the finish line, you realize the game itself was never the prize.
So, if the conquest is complete, what's the deep hunger that remains? What does that alpha male loneliness actually look like?
The deep hunger is not the need to dominate other people. It's the fundamental human need to matter to something larger than the self. It's the search for transcendence.
Meaning is found in transcendence, not just control.
Meaning is found in a purpose that extends beyond your own consumption, in a legacy that outlives your bank account, in genuine community. If you build a great body and amass vast wealth, but the only purpose of that power is to get more power, the cycle becomes pointless. You're just acquiring fuel to acquire more fuel. The reason is missing.
Imagine that manifests as a constant, exhausting need for more performance, more conquest, just to keep the distraction going.
It does. The tyranny the follower imposes on others quickly becomes a tyranny imposed on the self. You can never stop performing, because if you stop, the emptiness rushes back in. The external proof becomes a cage.
Let's talk about the reaction to this figure, specifically the institutional panic when he was banned from major platforms. This wasn't just a rejection of toxic rhetoric. It felt like a profound fear of losing control over the narrative.
He absolutely terrified institutions because he was a massive, decentralized channel of discourse that bypassed all traditional gatekeepers. He didn't need a university degree. He didn't need a media platform. He didn't need political endorsements. He reached millions directly.
He mocked established moral authorities, journalists, academics, and challenged their monopoly on discourse, speaking directly to men who were already deeply skeptical of those authorities.
The establishment's reaction was pure self-preservation. This leads to the critical takeaway. You don't ban clowns, you ban rivals. A clown is annoying but harmless. A rival is an existential threat to your authority and your right to define reality.
He became a direct competitor in the marketplace of ideas and attention, and the only way they felt they could respond was to censor him.
And the result of that censorship was dramatically counterproductive. It didn't defeat him. It did the exact opposite. It canonized him in the eyes of his followers.
It validated his core narrative that he was an outsider truth-teller being suppressed by a hostile establishment. The ban was proof that the Matrix was real.
It provided the perfect persecution narrative, which transformed him from a controversial entrepreneur into a martyr for his cause. It solidified his base and made him an even more powerful anti-establishment symbol. The attempt to destroy his influence only intensified it.
So if this archetype, the warrior capitalist, is the result of cultural collapse, what comes next? What's phase 2?
The figure we've discussed isn't the future of masculinity. He represents the end of one specific chapter, the material fantasy that promised fulfillment through power and wealth.
And the most revealing part is his own gradual evolution. He reached the finish line of that material fantasy, and what he found there has visibly caused his language to shift.
The sources highlight this perfectly. The ultimate indictment of his own philosophy is that the man who won the game is now signaling that the prize was incomplete. He got the wealth, the status, the attention. Yet, he is now shifting his language away from pure conquest and toward concepts that look like meaning, legacy, spiritual belief, building something enduring.
Conquest satisfies hunger, not purpose. Status fills silence, not emptiness.
And control cannot substitute for genuine direction. His evolution, perhaps unintentionally, exposes the central lie of dominance culture. That power alone is enough. He proved that it is not.
So the next phase, the next archetype has to be different because the material path was proven incomplete by its most successful champion. What does phase 2 look like?
Phase 2 will be significantly different. It'll be less loud because it won't be focused on performance for clicks. It will be more intelligent, integrating deeper philosophy. It'll be spiritually grounded, searching for that meaning beyond the material. And crucially, it'll be emotionally literate because men will realize that control mechanisms fail to provide fulfillment.
But this next phase could still be incredibly dangerous if that energy isn't steered toward positive ends.
Absolutely. The pursuit of meaning is a powerful engine. If harnessed for cynical or destructive ends, it can be even more potent than the pursuit of mere wealth. The distinction will be defined by their action. The current archetype screamed and conquered. The future masculine archetypes won't scream, you'll build.
You'll build purpose, community, a legacy that serves a higher cause.
And this brings us to the final challenge for society. The way to defeat this phenomenon is not through bans, but by addressing the vacuum he filled. We must offer a vision of masculinity that integrates power with responsibility, ambition with purpose, and discipline with transcendence. If we fail to do that, he will not be the last figure of his kind. The most provocative thought for you to consider is revealed in the figure's own trajectory. His evolution shows the hard limit of the archetype he embodies. He reached the absolute top of the material mountain and found no altar only, more altitude, and the same lack of purpose. The question remains for all of us as we rebuild the map. What is strength for, if not in service of something greater than oneself?
That is the core question that will define the next chapter for an entire generation. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.